Kathleen Kennedy has stepped down as the president of Lucasfilm, a role she has held since 2012 when Disney bought the lightsaber factory from George Lucas. With a Star Wars career that has seen its fair share of turmoil, what will this mean for the Disney behemoth, especially since we've now heard that Dave Filoni and Lin-Manuel Brennan are scheduled to take over? Is this sad news for the franchise, or is Star Wars about to enter a golden era? Let's talk about it. Sam, Kathleen Kennedy, she stepped down last week.
You know, at the
Friday?
end of the special edition Return of the Jedi, where the galaxy is celebrating the end of the Emperor, and there's a lot of do-do-do-do.
Yeah, and lots of like...
You know, Obi-Wan, and... Well, in my head, this is kind of what it should feel like, but in reality, it's the opening to Terminator 2, where you have, like... Kathleen, Star Wars in 2012, you know, there's light and greatness, and then 14 years later, we just see skulls everywhere.
So do you think that she was pretty much the fall of this, or do you think... Is she responsible for the fall of Star Wars? Well, okay, well, actually, have I jumped the gun? Is Star Wars in a bad place right now?
Yes. Well, I mean, it depends how you look at it. Like, money-wise, it's still making Disney money, so it's still financially relevant. But cultural relevancy, I think, is basically in the pits.
Okay.
And it's very, very hard to just blame, just to say, is it Kathleen Kennedy's fault? That is far too simplistic, but you have to look at the facts. In her reign as the president of Lucasfilm, Star Wars has gone from cultural major significance to no one really wants Star Wars anymore in, like, the masses. But there's a lot of equations that fall into that. We've had Marvel basically take over pop culture in the last 15, 20 years. She has a very complicated legacy, and I think deep down, I like Star Wars quite a lot. Star Wars still had a bit of hope, not no pun intended, because obviously hope plays a lot in Star Wars, but there was a bit of hope where Star Wars would go, and now, because of the major films that she has produced, she has been involved in, I think it's kind of like, there's like a cut-off now, and I don't know whether it can ever regain that magic.
Okay.
But that's my opinion.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think that obviously the buck stops with someone. I don't know whether or not Kathleen Kennedy is that person, though, because
she is.
You know,
she isn't.
We've spoken about a lot of stuff to do with Star Wars over the few episodes that we put out, right? And I do think that some of the bigger things for me are, the thing I didn't like is there was no strength of conviction going from Last Jedi into Rise of Skywalker, and I think for me that's the point where I was like, oh no. That's where it let down. I've not followed any of the TV stuff. I've only done one season of The Mandalorian. TV doesn't necessarily grab me that way, so I'm not interested necessarily in it. But I also know that is a big reason for kind of the dilution, let's say, of the Star Wars product. For me, though, and this is where I kind of say that the fault, I can't necessarily put it straight on Kathleen Kennedy's door, is Disney push for more TV stuff. Like, that was the whole point. Like, COVID happened and they all panicked and went, right, we've got our stuff that's going straight to streaming. Star Wars feels like that natural thing. And at the time, a lot of people were calling out for a lot more Star Wars. You know?
Yeah.
So, the only difference is that the stuff that we've ended up getting has been very mixed, has been received differently. And I think that's now why it's then fallen down this, like, crevice. So, yes, definitely, I think there's an element of, you put somebody else in charge, let's see what they do, because you can't ignore what Kevin Feige's done for Marvel. So if we can have a similar injection, then that's fine, but I'm not sure. My next question then is, there are rumours at the moment, I mentioned the two people that are going to be taking over is going to be Dave Filoni and Lin-Manuel Brennan. They are taking a very similar approach to Star Wars that Warner Bros. Has taken to DC, in as much as James Gunn is leading creative. I think Dave Filoni will be leading creative from a Star Wars perspective. And then Lin-Manuel Brennan will then be looking at the business side of things.
Yeah, she's from Wales, believe it or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
She is basically the financial budgeting, kind of like making sure that what Dave Filoni will look to do creativity fits in the budget of Lucasfilm.
So do you think that'll be successful?
I mean, Dave Filoni, you know, that's a big job. It's a big job for somebody who has barely done live action. Like James Gunn proved his credentials as a sort of big-time franchise developer with Guardians of the Galaxy.
But does this take Filoni away from necessarily being involved in this stuff, and he's more than an overseer of what the law is doing?
No, I think he'll be hands on everything.
Because he's going to be a bit different, isn't he, to James Gunn? So James Gunn has like come out the gate and he's directing everything, or he's directed quite a lot of the DC universe. But is Filoni going to necessarily be that creative, or is he going to be more like Kevin Feige and he's just going to make sure that he's sitting on this like book of law that gets kind of like?
I think Filoni will be. James Gunn directs, but basically every major DC film will probably be written and directed by James Gunn. I don't think Filoni will direct every film, but he will absolutely write or produce or both.
Cool.
He will have his hands in the pie of everything.
Okay.
Which I would rather this situation than it was before, because before it did feel like it was just basically everyone like trying to like retain power. And Filoni was always sort of like kicking the door in, and Kathleen Kennedy was basically saying no. I think Star Wars has something of a bright future, but again, it's what's come before. Like, the whole time you're kind of watching Star Wars over the last 10 years is that no one seems to think about the bigger picture. Like, for all of the flaws of the prequel era, at least the bigger picture was fine. We always knew it would lead to Darth Vader somewhat redeeming himself, more like saving his son to fulfill his prophecy, and the most evil character in the franchise dies. And when you unhook that for what we had, it will just leave a permanently bad taste in everyone's mouths. So it's very tricky to sort of. It's why I use my Terminator analogy. It's just like, well, you know, what's left? What can you do now when the pillar of how all this works is kind of gone? This is why a lot of people are worried about the Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson series, because they're obviously bringing that back, and people are like, well, don't ruin Return of the King, because that's kind of what Star Wars did. They just basically unraveled their greatest success.
Yeah.
And for what?
Yeah, I suppose
that's the issue.
But then that's my next question then to you, is essentially, what do you reckon Filoni's going to do? Because there is actually an argument now, or at least from a creative perspective. Like Brenner, for instance, is going to be looking after finances. We might have time to talk about that. But in terms of a creative push and the creative direction, what do you reckon he's going to do? Because Filoni's had massive success with obviously going back and filling in blanks. So did he do the Clone Wars saga, right? Like the animated show.
Yeah, he basically
huge success. But then arguably, some of their best critically and kind of well-received stuff has been things like Andor and Rogue One and the stuff that has gone back and filled in gaps. What do you reckon their focus will be? Do you reckon it will be this new Rey trilogy that they keep talking about?
That's
you reckon they'll go back and...
That's not going to happen.
Who knows? I mean, we don't know how far along this has come. Because there's also that... Or do you reckon that there'll be a new trilogy that will spin off this? Do you reckon he'll essentially retcon the sequel trilogy? Or do you reckon that they'll just go, no, let's bed down on everything that we've got so far and tell stories within that? What do you reckon the creative push will be?
I think the overall feeling is that we need to focus on a completely new time in Star Wars. I think a lot of people would probably rather the sequels be retconned. I can't see that happening. I don't think that will ever happen while Disney own Star Wars. That'll be too embarrassing. Can you imagine that?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me though if they spin it off, and it would not surprise me now if we see the Ben Swallow, Adam Driver movie that's been kind of knocking around with Soderbergh attached.
Dave Filoni in Star Wars has played around with different timelines, so I mean that would be kind of a Star Wars dork's wet dream if he just basically said like, you can have the sequel era, but it's not going to be the Star Wars anymore.
Okay.
I think that is a possibility, because now Filoni is kind of like effectively the guy to run that. But I mean, your guess is as good as mine at this point, because obviously it's not just, we're not living in the George Lucas land. It's not like Dave Filoni is completely in charge of all this. He has to have Bob Iger still kind of dictate where Star Wars will go. But it will get the
You also have a massive hill to climb, because in the grand scheme of things, you've got Kevin Feige as well. I mean, I know that Marvel's a different conversation altogether, but that's still a huge tentpole for what a producer at that level should be doing, the creative control and so on and so forth. So Dave Filoni's got mates that he could probably lean on. You could probably give Kevin a call and be like, right, what's going on here? Because there was rumours years ago that Kevin was going to step over and then start taking over the Star Wars
I
stuff.
think that is also a big hindrance on Kathleen Kennedy's legacy, because obviously her legacy will now kind of be moulded in the next couple of years, particularly when we see how Filoni does on the creative side. But along with kind of what I was talking about, like just not respecting the bigger picture of Star Wars and like its legacy during George Lucas, there were just so many false dawns with so many projects. Like, I've never known a studio, even today, which you might not technically blame her for, the Filoni film about the Mandoverse has now been pushed back. I mean, how many pushbacks?
That was due out this year, wasn't it?
No, that's the Mandalorian film. Sorry, the conclusion to the Mandoverse was going to be a Filoni film in about 4 years. But there's been so many films that have just either been poorly produced, like the Solo film, for example, and Rise of Skywalker to a certain extent. It was just so amateurish. And a lot of people defend Kathleen Kennedy because she is obviously an acclaimed producer, and that her legacy is fine. But as a president, it's just what not to do, which I think will be her legacy. Like, you've taken something that has like a treasure trove of lore, and you've just kind of rendered it all like non-interesting. Now, how do you do that?
Yeah.
But again, her legacy will be disputed, and then we now look to the Filoniverse.
Yeah. So that's that would be that. Let's finish that. Let's wrap this up then by talking about the excitement for the future. Do you think this is a good choice? Do you think Dave Filoni is good? And do you think is there a massive shadow cast by Kathleen Kennedy that Filoni has to essentially bring into the light, or is it good to just be almost draw a line underneath it? And yes, let's now look forward to the Filoniverse. I
think the latter is probably the healthiest option. Mm-hmm. But again, everything that he does will be tied. I don't want to use a football analogy, but it's very similar. Like, if you are at like 20 points of safety and you bring in a new coach, it's hard to really fathom how he'll do when there's been so much damage already done. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, time will tell. I mean, I think if he retcons a lot of what happened during Kathleen Kennedy's era, I think long term it will be healthier for Star Wars. Mm-hmm. But I'm older, so I don't know how that would go.
Yeah.
But it's probably the healthiest way. No one wants Luke Skywalker to be dead, or Palpatine to be back, or Darth Vader's whole point of his character to be null and void. Mm-hmm. No one wants that, and that's kind of what she did. But again, to go full circle, we don't know the full ins and outs.
Yeah.
But she is the president.
Yeah.
Again, using another football comparison, it's not always the manager's fault, but the buck stops at him.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that's the best way to kind of wrap this up as well.
Yeah.
Kathleen Kennedy, she is now left the role. So what do you guys think? Is it something, do you think the Filoniverse is something to get excited about, or do you think we're headed for another bit of a Star Wars disaster? Let us know in the comments below. Otherwise, we'll talk about it soon.